Hello, my name is Mike Saint-Fleur, and today I'll be talking about defense in depth, AppArmor and HTTPS hardening, focusing on Ubuntu 24 and Windows Server 2022 environment. In this presentation, I'll highlight two layers of security. First, we'll look at AppArmor, a Linux security framework that locks down application at the process level. Then, we'll move into HTTPS, the secure version of HTTP, and explore how to configure and harden it in IIS on Windows and Apache on Linux. I'll begin with AppArmor, explaining what it is, how to harden it, and a new automation approach called LickSec. After that, we'll talk about how to check AppArmor status, which is part of the server checklist. Then we'll switch and compare HTTP and HTTPS. This section will show why TLS 1.3 is the standard we need to enforce. From there, I'll discuss its server platform. On Windows Server 2022, we'll use IIS to configure HTTPS and apply hardening. On Linux, we'll use Apache to do the same, and we'll look at recommendations from both canonical and academic research. Finally, we'll verify everything with Nmap, which stands for Open Port, TLS protocol, and ciphers. I'll wrap up with a summary of the most important takeaway. AppArmor, like Application Armor, is a mandatory access control framework in Linux. Unlike standard file permissions, which are discretionary and user-driven, AppArmor enforces rules directly at the kernel level. According to canonical documentation, it uses profilers that define exactly what an application can and cannot do. This profile cannot access to files, networks, and capability. AppArmor runs in two modes. In complaint mode, which is useful during testing, the system just logs violation. In enforce mode, those violations are actively blocked. Profiles are stored under /etc/apparmor.d. This architecture apply the principle at least privilege. If an attacker compromises an application, they stuck inside a small sandbox rather than getting free access to the whole system. To hardening AppArmor, administrators need to be proactive. First, any application exposed to the internet, such as Apache or SSH, should run in enforce mode. Leaving them in complaint mode creates vulnerability. Second, AppArmor provides two AA logprof tools which analyze logs and suggest adjustment. This allows you to test a permission before enforcing them. Third, profiles should be denied by default where only explicit allowed action are permitted. Together, these steps give AppArmor the strength to resist real-world exploitation attempts. Verification ensures that our hardening is actually applied. To verify AppArmor is active, Ubuntu documentation shows we use the command sudo AA status. This command displays how many profiles are loaded and whether they are in enforce mode or complaint mode. For example, the system might report 23 profiles are in enforce mode. That's the kind of explicit number we need for our lab checklist. Other useful commands are AA tag enabled, which check if AppArmor is running, and system control status AppArmor, which check if the system service is running. By recording this result, we have evidence that AppArmor isn't just installed but active in confining process. Next, I will discuss the network layer and compare HTTP to HTTPS. HTTP, which run on port 80, is insecure because it sends everything in plain text. That means password, credit card numbers, or session cookies can be intercepted. HTTPS running on port 443 encrypt communication with TLS. TLS 1.3 defined in RFC 8446 is the latest and most secure version. It offers full secrecy and eliminated outdated cryptographic option. As Richard by Tracy emphasized, TLS hardening is a requirement for public servers. In short, HTTP is obsolete. HTTPS is the standard. On Windows Server 2022, we configure HTTPS using IIS. That's Internet Information Services. Inside IIS Manager, we add an HTTPS binding on port 443. Once that binding is created, we need to validate the setup. Running nmap-ss-p443 and should show 443/TCP open, which confirms the listener is active. Finally, modern version of IIS support HTTP Strict Transport Security, or HSTS. This forces client to connect securely and prevents downgrade attack. In addition, according to Microsoft Learn, Windows Server 2022 also supports TLS 1.3, which means we can pair HSTS with the latest encryption protocol to ensure robust protection for client connection. Here are the 5 best practices for securing IIS and HTTPS configuration. First, minimize unnecessary IIS module and services. Each extra feature increases the attack surface. Second, restrict TLS to version 1.2 and 1.3. Older protocols are vulnerable and should be disabled. Windows Server 2022 supports TLS 1.3, which improves encryption and performance. Third, enforce strong cipher suites. Weak algorithms such as RC4 or 3DES must be removed. Following this recommendation, ensure IIS use only modern secure suites. Fourth, enable login and review logs regularly. Logs provide insight into suspicious activity and help detect potential attack. Finally, audit configuration changes. Tracking modification ensures no unauthorization or insecure changes within your setup. Together, these practices create a layered defense that keeps IIS environments resilient against threats. Now, I will discuss the steps for enabling SSL on Apache web server. First, we enable the SSL module. The command is a 2nmod SSL. This allows Apache to handle encryption HTTPS traffic. Next, we enable the default SSL site with the command a 2inSite default tag SSL. This activates the pre-configured HTTPS setting that comes with Apache. Once that's done, we restart Apache so the changes take effect. The command is system control restart Apache 2. Restarting is necessary to load the new SSL configuration. Finally, we verify that port 443 is open. We do this with nmap using the command nmap tag ss tag p 443 IP. A successful result will show 443/TCP open. Together, these steps enable and confirm HTTPS functionality on Apache. Once HTTPS is enabled, it's important to harden Apache so the server isn't just encrypted, but also secure against modern threats. The first steps is to restrict the protocol that Apache will accept. Only TLS 1.2 and 1.3 should be allowed. Next, we configure strong cipher suites. Modern suites use elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman ephemeral for key exchange, which provide for secrecy and pair it with authenticated encryption with associated data algorithms. This combination ensures strong protection while disabling older, weaker suites. We then enforce HSTS headers that tell browser to always use HTTPS. It's also good to hide unnecessary server detail by setting server tokens, prod, and disabling a server signature. Finally, Succinto emphasized that configuration alone is not enough. They recommend pairing Apache with intrusion detection system like Suricata or Snort. This layered approach catches attack in real time. After configuration, Apache is essential to verify that our servers are truly secure. We use Nmap for testing. First, we must run a send scan. This checks that only the expected port like HTTP on 80 and HTTPS on 443 are open. Next, we use nmap-sv-p443. This command tells us which service and version are running on port 443, helping us confirm that TLS is properly enabled. Finally, the script will perform an audit of all supported TLS protocol and ciphers. This ensures the server isn't allowing weak or outdated encryption. Research back up the value of this approach. Pittman compared Nmap to other scanners like Zmap and masking, and find that while Nmap is slower, it's much more accurate. Together, this verification steps confirm that our server aren't just configured correctly, but also resilient against real-world threats. To summarize, AppArmor info strict profile. HTTPS with TLS 1.2, 1.3 on port 443 is the secret standard, blocking wicked protocol. IIS hardening followed NIST and Microsoft guidance for proving best practice. Apache hardening adds strong cipher. HSTS hidden service data plus IDS tool like Suricata or Snort. Nmap validated this setup with accuracy, and automation with Python makes it scalable for enterprise use. Together, this highlights a full defense in-depth strategy, configured, hardened, and continuously verified. These are the references supporting today's presentation. They include scholarly articles from Succinto, Pittman, and more, as well as government standard RFCs and vendor documentation. Together, they provide academic credibility and practical steps for securing both Linux and Windows servers. Thank you.